Xbox and Microsoft almost gave us what we wanted. Happy Friday, friends. It is Friday. It was actually a relatively busy week here, mostly because Microsoft Ignite happened in Chicago. If you went to that, hopefully you got some deep dish while you were up there. There's a lot of news that came out of that. Xbox was doing its thing like it usually does. And, it's the week before Thanksgiving, so I expect next week to slow down here just a little bit. Actually, probably more than a little bit, unless you're looking for Black Friday deals. And isn't it Thanksgiving in Canada? I always thought it was like a week earlier or something like that. I could be wrong. It doesn't matter. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Let's dive into the tech news because there is a lot of it. So kicking it off here, Microsoft is modernizing the Windows Hello experience. This is now showing up for Canary users. And so, hey, it's a bit more polished. It's a little bit better. It looks a little bit more Windows 11 like, if I'm honest. And so, that is rolling out. And speaking of Ignite, because that's where, a lot of the conversation is happening this week, companions are coming to the taskbar, at least from Microsoft 365. There were a bunch of photos of this posted up as they were doing the keynote across the Twitters, the X's, and the Blue Skies, which, by the way, everybody jump on the Blue Sky bandwagon if you whatever. These are taskbar widgets, but I believe they're going to be locked to Microsoft 365 companions. They kind of feel like phone link, that thing that showed up, the sidecar companion for the start menu, if you're familiar with that, showed up for a bit. But these Microsoft 365 companions are coming, and I gotta tell you, they remind me a lot of My People, right? So My People, it is dead, but it has risen again like a phoenix from the taskbar or something like that. It's not exactly that stuff, but it feels very, very similar. And so I believe these are currently only for Microsoft 365 stuff. We'll see if they bring them to like OneDrive or any consumer side, but this was Ignite, and Ignite is all about Microsoft 365 and Office 365 and all that. So maybe we'll see more of that on the consumer side, but there you go. Speaking of Microsoft 365 and things that were so very close. So there's a new product coming from Microsoft that'll ship in the spring called the Microsoft 365 Link. Now, when you first see this thing, and you've probably seen it by now, it looks like a Mac Mini competitor. It even has 8 gigs of RAM. It even has an Intel chip, which kind of makes you tell you it's not based on ARM. But when this thing started floating around, it's like, oh man, that's it. Microsoft's going to ship. They're going to ship a Mac Mini competitor. Throw an ARM chip in there. Give it at least 8 gigs of RAM. Probably 16 gigs is probably. Make it an AI Copilot desktop PC, make it the first one, because it has good ports. It has HDMI, it has DisplayPort, it has various USB. But whatever, this thing is I think $349 dues, only part of Microsoft 365. It's basically a thin client. What is old is new again, I guess. But there are definitely use case scenarios for this, none of which are consumer, at least as of right now. But anybody who's using thin clients, this could be very lucrative and very appealing. However, like Microsoft, make this thing like $699, $599, throw a Qualcomm chip in there. This thing would sell. I bet it would. Slap a Surface, make it silver like Surface, put a Qualcomm chip in there, or NVIDIA, right? They're supposedly making stuff next year. And like that. It feels like that, and bring back Media Center. Then I can have my Media Center, my Zune, and my Windows Phone, and the trifecta would be complete. Anyways, it looks like a neat little device. I hope it does well for Microsoft and that they expand upon it. I realistically hope that they do. Also, there was this Windows Resiliency Initiative that was talked about a lot. Now, this is coming out of the CrowdStrike little snafu over the summer, if you remember that, where a little bad update from CrowdStrike took down like half the economy. So Microsoft announced a bunch of stuff. One is called Quick Machine Recovery feature that will allow IT admins to deploy targeted fixes on all PCs. They're also now moving towards allowing all security products will be required to go through deployment rings with deep monitoring to ensure that a single update isn't going to do what CrowdStrike did. So that, deep monitoring, quick machine recovery. And then in July of 2025, Microsoft will also launch a private preview program for security products that will allow developers, I don't know why I kept it on that image for so long, that will allow developers to investigate and interested in building their products outside of the kernel mode on that security side to join that private preview program. So time will tell. Time will legitimately tell if these initiatives are good enough. Once again, they are they're reacting to things that happen, not proactive. But of course, that one slipped through, and so here we are. here we are. Anyways, they sound like decent updates anyways, but yeah. Things that aren't going to make you happy if you're a Windows user, especially on Windows 10, more full screen ads, if you want to call them that, in which you probably should, are coming to Windows 10. There's an example on your screen here. This is not the end, folks. Like, this is probably just really like the midpoint, if not even closer to the beginning. With Windows 10 coming to an end in 2025, Microsoft wants you off of it, right? I'm sure they'll happily take, $30 from consumers for extended support stuff. But what they really want you to do is to upgrade to Windows 11 or buy a new PC. You know, that's like this is their go-to-market. This is their get people to update. This is get people to spend money on consumer hardware and make PC sales, climb again, or whatever you want to call it. But here you go. More ads are here. More ads are coming, and don't think that Microsoft is just going to sit by and let Windows 10 silently go off into the sunset. They are going to be, they're going to be hunting you down, and yeah. Also, another thing announced this week is the Bing Wallpaper app is an app you can download, but you might not want to do it because a good friend, Rafael Riviera, kind of tore it apart. And so, yeah, so if you install the Bing Wallpaper app, the first thing it's going to do is automatically install Bing Visual Search, and it's also going to basically take your Firefox and Chrome cookies and kind of ingest that information and get better profiling of you to probably serve better ads. Also, if you don't have Edge set as your default browser, you will soon have a pop-up eventually at some point along the way reminding you that maybe you probably should. Maybe you should. Maybe you should do that. Maybe you shouldn't download that app. You know, it's up to you, but it doesn't feel great at the end of the day. Also, impossible to ignore that Google has found itself on the wrong side of the Department of Justice ruling. It's not even so much a ruling, it's the remedies we're now learning about. What they're suggesting or stating to the judge is that Google should be broken up. Namely, things right now are Chrome being like cleaved off of Google. It is significant. You cannot ignore what is happening here, and that is why I'm not ignoring it. Although it's a bit too early to truly understand like what this actually means and how this is going to happen. And it's far from being like definitive and this is happening. Things, the wheels of justice take a long time to maneuver themselves. So yeah. Although it does give Microsoft the funniest chance possible to do the funniest thing possible. I screwed up my own joke. To buy, what if Microsoft bought Chrome? Can you even imagine? They're not going to. I don't know who would buy Chrome. Like, it can't be cheap. It's going to be tens of billions of dollars. Realistically, it should probably be put into its own entity, like a non-profit, but I don't even know if that would do it just because so many things depend on Chrome these days. Not just their own browser, right? Edge, obviously. So we'll see. We will see what happens. It's just something you should keep an eye on. On to the gaming news this week. Microsoft announced that you can now stream your own games with Xbox over xCloud, and it's all in beta. Now, and there's also a lot of caveats. The first caveat is you got to be paying for Game Pass Ultimate. The second caveat is that it's only for 50 titles that Xbox has currently supporting. And the third caveat is that it's not all devices are supported. So I don't think any Xbox console is supported. And so you can check that out. I have not tried it. This doesn't necessarily appeal to me. I do have to wonder why it's only 50 titles, and I have to think that it's probably like a licensing thing in some respects, right? Like, imagine Microsoft goes to EA and say, hey, we want to stream all the past Madden games, like Madden 22, Madden 23. Let us stream it across here. It's great for the end user. They'll be so happy. And you would imagine EA is like, no, like, we're not going to allow that. We don't want people streaming Madden 22. Make them buy Madden 24. And then maybe Madden 24 should be allowed, but no older than that or something like that. You can, like, you see what I mean? It's more so to the effect of just because a game is being sold by Xbox or through the Xbox store doesn't mean Microsoft has the licensing rights to stream it across its network. So I suspect that some of that is in play here. And then Stalker 2 is now out. And so, yeah, keep in mind, for people, I have not played it yet, but keep in mind that this is not Call of Duty. This is not a game where you're running, sliding around, shooting, and whatever else. It's Stalker 2. And so for people who are new to the genre, I should say, it's a slower paced game, but it is now out. I believe it's also on Game Pass as well, so you can keep your eyes and ears on that. Also, Avowed screenshots have started to show up. There were some late media events here. Now, granted, they're not going to show off bad screenshots. They're not going to do that. However, I think they look great. They look great. They look cinematic. It looks like a world you just want to dive into and go explore and looking through all the nooks and crannies of what Avowed will offer. However, like, it's all going to come down to gameplay, right? They're showing off the things. They're trying to hype us up, and it's good. Like, I don't think this is a bad thing. This is part of a media marketing campaign. That's what should happen. But again, it'll come down to gameplay, bugs, and everything else. Although Phil Spencer said the game was not delayed because of bugs. It's just, I think that they have a packed holiday season, and they bumped it out a little bit to give some things some breathing room. So, also, just keep in mind that next week is a holiday in the United States. I expect things to slow down quite a bit compared to what this week was, right? There's no Ignite next week, and so things will slow down. And I almost left out too. Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 came out here, and yeah, I almost left this one off. It was in my notes, and so it came out. The gameplay mechanics are probably fine. I have not touched it yet either. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty Black Ops, if I'm honest here. However, it really, as you can see by the Steam reviews, did not go over well. And the reason why it didn't go over well is that nobody could actually get in. Like, they were basically getting a friendly DDoS, but it's worse than that. So basically, in a nutshell version, you go to Steam, you buy the game or whatever, you acquire the game, and you open it up and you got to start downloading things. But here's where it kind of gets dicey, because you have to have the game open to download the content from Azure. That's accruing time in Steam, which means people who, if they had slow connections, were saying that they played the game, but they weren't actually able to play, which means they might be outside the return window if they even didn't like it. So whatever. Microsoft, for all their technological prowess, totally flubbed this with all the demand to download everything. And when you're playing the game, it downloads like 5 gigs an hour or something crazy like that, because they're streaming a lot of content. I'm not, that's the 5 gigs per hour is a whole different conversation. But whatever. It was just more of Microsoft, like, you have a good game, you have a good title, and it's like, what screwed up the launch? Not the game, not the bugs, not the marketing messaging, not the actual content. It was literally just being able to download and get into the game, and then they got review slammed for it. So, there you go. Almost left that one out. Almost did. So, on to my favorite part of the week. Sydney2K dropping in with the first question. He says, so Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 had an unimpressive start, with servers unable to keep up with the sheer number of people trying to download and start the game. People are saying that this is Microsoft. They are the leaders of the cloud, and why can't they just throw more servers at it? I'm pretty sure there's more to it. Are you even able to explain the logistics of servers? So, I don't know this specific scenario. People are like, just throw more servers at it. Like, what does that mean? Like, right? So Microsoft has, more than likely, you make a connection to a server, and then it points you somewhere, right? It points you to the files and download. Like, they have a caching, there's edge points, it gets really complex. It's not like somebody walks into the server room and, like, throws a couple breakers, and then there's suddenly more people on there. Now, granted, you could say that it should be elastic, which I think is kind of how AWS does it. And like, it should have expanded. They should have been dynamically caching this thing, dynamically expanding the server capacity. That is all true. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing in the back of my little brainy noodle back here. Microsoft, I believe in their last earnings call, has talked about how they've had cloud capacity issues with some of their data centers not coming online early enough. So without knowing enough about it, I do happen to wonder, like, does Microsoft have enough capacity to serve all this? Because at the end of the day, Xbox and Flight Sim only get a finite number of assets, and those assets are finite, obviously, and maybe they didn't get the additional assets because Microsoft's like, look, we need this stuff for AI, for our corporate customers who are paying a lot more, so you've got to make it work with this. There's so many variables. It's more of hypothesizing how it potentially could have failed. The thing is that there are a lot of things they could have done if they would have anticipated this demand correctly, and then made sure that they were set up correctly, even with the same number of servers, potentially. Like, preloading. That is one of the most easiest ways to allow people to mitigate this issue, right? You see it all the time. Like, a game's coming out in a week, download it now. Preloading. Why wasn't preloading available? Why couldn't we do any of that? Like, so those types of things, even with the same number of servers, could have alleviated that issue, but here we are. Mr. PKI dropping a crazy question, not crazy question, a unique question. He says, did you see that Microsoft is going to become a book publisher? What was the thinking here? Microsoft, so they published a book, whatever, I'm not going to go to the details of the book, but Microsoft has actually published a lot of I don't know. Well, they haven't published them. They've had a lot of books written, like Satya Nadella, when he took over CEO. I'm sure somebody ghostwrote it, was like Hit Reset, and so they've published, been part of a lot of books. But now maybe they're taking it under their own umbrella. But at the end of the day, book publishing is becoming so much easier than it used to be. Like I've literally written a book, and you can go through Amazon. They probably went through somebody else, and it's just like filling out things, and then you are technically kind of a publisher. And so I'm curious if Microsoft went like that. I cannot imagine they're buying their own book printing services. They're just slapping their name on it. So the Joe Finn says, have you heard about this Microsoft project UFO? It's over on GitHub. He said it's a UI focused agent, which is a creative name, for Windows OS interaction. Seems like a pretty interesting project. Do you think Microsoft is working on this kind of thing for the broader Windows audience? I absolutely know that they are working on this thing. I shouldn't say no, but we believe, and I think they even talked about automating some like tasks or whatever. We know that they're working on this because ChatGPT is also working on this, right? They announced one, I believe, for Mac OS. And so this would be the Microsoft equivalent. And given with like recall and everything else that's going on, we kind of expected stuff like this to happen. And so I'll be super curious to see how these things evolve, because one of the challenges, it's real easy to automate a repetitive task, but how many repetitive tasks do you have that you could like automate through this? Like reading email, that's kind of hard. And like, should you delete email? Like we already know how Microsoft spam filters work, so that's kind of difficult. I'm not ruling out this technology. I think it's very much a stepping stone to the broader general AI in the computing initiative with things like recall and all that stuff. Like you have to have an ecosystem of like endpoint agents or agents within the applications that make more sense rather than like a general AI across the OS. And maybe that is where this is headed. It's super interesting though. Like this AI stuff fascinates me about how quickly it's evolving and the underlying infrastructures needed to deliver that may have held back Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. So yeah. Anyways, I have not like dug into the GitHub repo, Mr. Joe Finn, although I am more than likely going to start doing that because I'll be curious to see how they are integrating with this. Like how, I use this term lately, how hacky are they getting, right? How are they injecting themselves into the OS? Like, are they literally simulating mouse movements? Are they trying to do API calls or other things like that? That will be interesting to see. So anyways, guys, 3 questions in the hopper this week. I was really late in posting that, so thank you to everybody who dropped in. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think is going on with Ignite, Xbox, and beyond. And as always, my friends, make sure to keep it subscribed here because the only BS on this podcast is me.